How did banh mi go from $100 to $1 and back again? When the French colonists came to Vietnam, they made sure that all of their necessary foods were also readily available to them, which meant importing them directly from France. One of those staple dishes was a simple sandwich known as jambon beurre, which translates to ham and butter. Thus, a basic ham and butter sandwich was an early source of inspiration for the banh mi. But another important meal in the evolution of the banh mi was the French charcuterie board. At its most basic level, a charcuterie board contains bread, butter or spread, meat, and cheese. In the 1800s, the French colonists were also living it up with the addition of liver pâté, possibly foie gras, pickles, fresh vegetables, and decadent spreads like jam, mustard, and mayonnaise. But it was only served to the French colonists, and it was only available at high-end restaurants. It wasn't something that regular Vietnamese citizens could afford. In a sense, charcuterie can be likened to a build-your-own sandwich station, which is why it's easy to see how the banh mi could take inspiration from it. The traditional Vietnamese banh mi is pretty basic when you get down to its core components. It has to have the ever-present baguette as its holding element, and it has to contain 50% wheat flour and 50% rice. Once you've got the bread down, you'll need mayonnaise or butter, some type of filling like pork, chicken, or tofu, fresh vegetables, typically cucumbers, as well as pickled daikon and carrots. Lastly, you'll need a few condiments to add a bit more flavor, like soy sauce, fish sauce, or Maggi seasoning. It's a simple, no-frills sandwich that utilizes all 5 of the different tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. It also combines different textures, which is probably a good thing, because as tasty as a slice of American cheese on untoasted white bread is, you have to admit that it's a bit boring.
I'm bored.
Wait!
There might be innumerable variations of banh mi, but the one constant is the bread. It's so important that banh mi literally translates to wheat bread. And what's particularly special about this bread is that it's not your typical French baguette. In the mid-1800s, the French decided that it was their duty to help Vietnam grow from an uncivilized and impoverished country to one more in line with European cultural ideals. Because Vietnam didn't have any of the required French ingredients for proper meals, colonists had theirs shipped over from the motherland. And so, the French introduced into Vietnamese cuisine items like flan, pâté, foie gras, coffee, and the baguette. As you can imagine, the 2 world wars put a bit of a damper on the importation and exportation of consumables and goods, which meant having to make do with what you had and learning how to improvise. So the French baguette underwent a bit of a transformation as it began using a 50-50 blend of wheat and rice flour as opposed to only wheat. The tasty result of this new recipe was a lighter, flakier, less dense, and somewhat hollow Vietnamese-style baguette that was perfect for the reinvention of the banh mi.
Un loaf de bread, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
When it's time to order the perfect banh mi, you'll be presented with a whole host of flavorful fillings and toppings. But when you get right down to it, there are just 2 main categories: Northern style and Saigon style. Northern style banh mi contains just a few ingredients, like butter, pâté, salt and pepper, and maybe a random cucumber or a little cilantro. It's basically just bread and spread with light seasoning. The Northern style is probably most akin to what the French colonists were scarfing down back in the day. Saigon style is the more well-known of the 2 banh mi styles and is most likely the version that you're familiar with. It generally contains 1 or 2 protein fillings, fragrant herbs, fresh and pickled vegetables, 1 or more spreads like mayonnaise and pâté, a spice element like sliced jalapenos or other fiery chilies, and more. The banh mi is typically enjoyed for breakfast or as a midday snack. That might sound a bit odd to American eaters, considering that the standard sandwich can usually incorporate pâté and pickles, but it's not uncommon to find these ingredients incorporated in breakfast around the world. For example, in Japan, the typical morning meal can include fish, miso soup, rice, and pickled vegetables, while Australians enjoy a healthy bowl of farro topped with a poached egg and pickled veggies. And in Germanic and Baltic countries, cold cuts and pâté are a normal part of the breakfast circuit. But there is an actual banh mi specifically designed for breakfast, and it's sort of the equivalent to a fried egg on toast. This breakfast banh mi is a buttered baguette with scrambled or sunny-side-up eggs, onions, and a smidge of soy sauce. Sounds tasty. So let's wake up and get cooking.
Wake up! Wake up, wake up, wake up!
Just like any other sandwich, there's a specific protocol that you must follow in order to properly assemble a banh mi. Of course, it depends on how much you're going to be stuffing into that fluffy little baguette, but nevertheless, each ingredient has its own designated spot in the lineup. This formula ultimately results in a fully functional sandwich, meaning it won't squish out the top, bottom, or sides. And that's a good thing, because who wants to ruin yet another shirt while eating lunch?
If you had another shirt to change into, you could nail the interview.
It's essential that the bread is fresh and warm. Once you slice it down the middle, spread mayonnaise all the way to the edges of the bread, then sprinkle it with the Swiss condiment Maggi seasoning. After that, add your protein of choice, pâté if desired, and then top it off with crunchy pickled daikon and carrot, sliced cucumber, fresh herbs like cilantro, mint, or basil, and some jalapeno. Then wrap it up or eat it right then and there. When it comes to ordering a banh mi, you can choose from a whole multitude of different protein fillings: pork, beef, chicken, fish, tofu, fried egg, or even ice cream. Okay, that last one isn't exactly a protein option, but it just proves the point that whatever you want on your banh mi, you can probably get it. You might think that something like barbecued or grilled pork, or even pork belly would be the clear winner overall, but you'd have to guess again.
Guess again.
The most popular banh mi also has the closest ties to the original French colonial sandwich. It's called the Special Combo, or sometimes the House Special. Whatever name it goes by, all you need to know is that it's special. It's a bit of a riff on a French charcuterie board, which typically has bread, butter, pâté, and cold cuts. It's basically a deconstructed sandwich. Meanwhile, the Special Combo is pretty much a cold cut sandwich filled with a combination of any of the following: cold cuts, ham, head cheese, rolled pork, salt-cured pork, or Vietnamese pork sausage. And then, of course, there's also the pâté, as well as the ever-present crunchy pickles, fresh cucumber and cilantro, your seasoning of choice, and a spice element if you want it. While sandwich toppings aren't usually listed as main ingredients, sometimes it's the little additions that really bring it all together. And it's no different with the banh mi. If you're going to enjoy a traditional Vietnamese banh mi, Maggi seasoning needs to be part of it. This liquid all-in-one flavor enhancer was invented in Switzerland in the 1800s by Swiss soup entrepreneur Julius Maggi. It sort of looks like soy sauce and lends an umami-esque taste to whatever dish it's added to. It comes in powdered, cubed, and liquid concentrate form, and it's described by chefs as tasting like celery, parsley, and fennel. It's a staple item in Swiss and French kitchens, and it's made its way to Vietnam by way of the French. Besides Maggi seasoning, mayonnaise or butter are the main spreads, which are necessary condiments as they keep the bread moist. Pâté is also a traditional spreadable protein that harkens back to the days when the French claimed this dish. Furthermore, the addition of fresh cucumber, scallion, and herbs give a bit of fresh crispness to this sometimes salty sandwich. Pickled daikon and carrot add a nice sour element, while laughing cow cheese can also play a part. There truly is a banh mi for every meal of the day. If you're a dessert person, then you're definitely going to want to try out a sweet banh mi. It's basically the Vietnamese version of an ice cream sandwich, except that it is quite literally a sandwich. The dessert banh mi is mainly eaten as a snack, and it consists of 3 to 4 scoops of ice cream topped with crushed peanuts and finished with a healthy drizzle of sweet and decadent condensed milk. And yes, it is all packed into one of those light and crispy Vietnamese baguettes. One giant ice cream sandwich will put you back about 5,000 Vietnamese dongs. But don't fret, as that's roughly only 21 American cents. That sounds like quite a deal if you're used to paying $4 or $5 for a box of ice cream sandwiches.
Ice cream, huh? You scream up, we'll scream up for ice cream.
On April 30th, 1975, Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, fell under Northern Vietnamese rule, thereby ending the Vietnam War. During the conflict, an innumerable number of Vietnamese refugees fled the country in search of better lives, and with them came their distinct cuisine. Many Vietnamese people who traveled to the United States ended up opening bakeries, cafes, and restaurants which focused on providing a sense of comfort through food. It was around this time that Americans discovered the incredibly unique wonders of the banh mi. But it wasn't until the 1980s that the banh mi truly took off. After the Fall of Saigon, a significant number of Vietnamese immigrants headed to Silicon Valley to find assembly line work in the tech industry. One man decided to set up a food truck specializing in banh mi in front of a computer manufacturing plant. He knew that the delectable sandwich would attract not only those from his homeland, but also his new American brethren. And he was right. Soon afterwards, non-Vietnamese workers and local college students were flocking to the truck. And in 1983, the man's son started Lee Brothers Food Services, Inc., which is now the largest industrial catering company in Northern California. The banh mi started off as somewhat of a luxury item, with limited access to anyone who wasn't French. It eventually evolved into a quick grab-and-go snack for the working man, and it can now typically be purchased for the equivalent of about $1 American. But while the banh mi is still considered an everyday snack item, Chef Peter Quang Franklin, owner of Anon Saigon in Ho Chi Minh City, has converted this humble sandwich into one fit for royalty that costs $100 American. This decadent sandwich starts off with truffled mayonnaise on bread that's grilled after application. While it's nice and toasty, both sides are spread with real French pâté sourced from a French expat who owns a charcuterie shop in the restaurant's locale. Instead of grilled pork, the chef adds sous vide pork that's also grilled to get a nice smoke. After that comes some sautéed foie gras, house-made pickles and cucumber, and the herbs, cilantro, basil, and mint. But wait, there's more. A side of sweet potato fries with caviar for dipping is also included, plus 2 glasses of Prosecco. And if the caviar sounds like too much, you can substitute it with truffled mayonnaise.